Okay, hello and welcome everyone. We are here with Emerge Races to Watch. My name is Jill Barkley Roy, and I am proud to be the affiliate director here at Emerge. So thank you for tuning in with us. We are doing this weekly interview series with women who are running for office, and we're really excited to be joined today by Brynne Kennedy, who's running to represent Northern California's District 4. So as an accomplished businesswoman, Brynne founded Topia, a software company that creates new tools to help lift up businesses who are competing in this changing economy. And after stepping down from Topia, Brynne went on to found Mobility for All, which is a charitable initiative that supported refugees displaced by political conflict and environmental disruptions. It's really important work. And she's one of many women who represent the future of politics in this country. And I am so happy that she agreed to join us today. Welcome, Brynne.
Thank you so much, Jill. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Well, let's get started. Can you give us an update on your race?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm running in California's 4th district, which is this incredibly special area that is Greater Sacramento, Lake Tahoe, and Yosemite National Park. The race is going really, really well. The most recent polling that we have has me and my opponent, the incumbent, a far-right Republican, Tom McClintock, locked in a statistical tie. So we are very, very excited. We're both in the ballpark and fighting it out to the end. But I will say that was a few weeks ago. So in the last couple of weeks, what we've seen is overwhelming momentum on our side. And we're just feeling really, really good.
That's exciting. And I know you're going to fight to the finish line and work really hard, which is great. So I think what's really interesting about your campaign to me is that you've been grounded in a commitment to put partisanship aside and put your community first. So can you talk about how you would continue to do that once elected to Congress?
Yeah, I'm so glad that we started here because this is an issue that I feel incredibly passionate about. You know, I often say we have to fight partisanship with the passion and the vigor and the courage that we fight for other things. And we don't do that today. And I believe, and I would say the majority of my district believes, that the greatest threat to our nation and our future is this toxic, divisive partisanship where we can't work with each other, can't get anything done, and just keep getting further and further apart. So for me, it starts in the district. It starts day in and day out on the campaign trail and how we've built the campaign. Firstly, I don't take any corporate PAC money. So this is truly a campaign built by individuals. Secondly, I have a very broad spectrum of support. It's something I've worked incredibly hard on and very, very proud of. We have very conservative Republicans who are voting for me, donating to me, leading volunteer teams, and we have very liberal Democrats that are doing the same thing. That's the coalition that will win this election. That's where we put our community first and parties aside, and we are so, so proud of that. I think carrying that spirit then into Washington to represent the district first, not the party first, and looking for like-minded people to put progress ahead of what I call performances and partisanship is very much what I will bring to Washington.
I love that. I often say when we're training candidates across the country is that how you run is often how you'll govern, and being able to find that commonality and work together is crucial in getting policies passed. So kudos to you on that. What are some of those policies? What are your policy priorities that you're hoping to work with anyone with in Washington?
Yeah, well, you know, I have 3 main priorities right now. Containing COVID and rebuilding the economy, fighting for more healthcare choice and reducing costs, and taking on in California what we have as our wildfire threats. Let me talk about each of those. So, you know, obviously COVID is one of the greatest challenges our nation has faced in many, many years. My opponent has been really, really awful on this issue. He is the only person from California who voted against COVID aid. He also voted against COVID aid 3 subsequent times. Just a month ago, he was calling masks useless. And this has not aged well, his positions, and it is not popular locally. So what I support is following basic public health guidelines, emulating them in the community so we can get the economy back going, get people back to school safely, and supporting our municipal governments with the funding they need to preserve vital public services. Looking ahead, I support tax and regulatory breaks for small businesses and working families, investments in infrastructure to make sure our digital infrastructure is what we need right now. If you believe this, we have had children sitting in parking lots to download their schoolwork during this time because they don't have broadband. I mean, this cannot happen in America in 2020. And I also support tax incentives to bring investments in new businesses and new innovations so we can lead the future as we come out of the pandemic. So that's my primary focus. And, in addition to that, really fighting to keep my community safe from wildfire threats and home insurance losses, expand and protect healthcare access. My opponents voted 60 times, 60, to gut healthcare, to remove protections from pre-existing conditions. So, I will be a very different representative for the interests of my constituents.
Wow. Well, that's an incredible policy platform, and I really can't wait to see you get to work. And it won't just benefit your district; those are things that will benefit all of us. So thank you for that. Tell me a little bit more about your healthcare plan. You mentioned obviously helping your community and our economy recover from COVID is a crucial thing for you. I think that something that COVID has brought about is just all the healthcare disparities that are there in our country. So tell me more specifically about your healthcare plan and what you think is necessary to get us on track here.
Yeah, this issue is very personal to me. When I was growing up, my parents got divorced and both of them got sick with cancer. My dad was a teacher, so he had good benefits from his contract, and we never had to worry about his care, just his illness. But my mom owns a Main Street store, and like so many of our small business owners, she could never afford health care for her or her employees. And so we navigated this complex, broken healthcare system as a family. And for me, it was terrifying and frustrating because when your family member gets sick, you should spend time with them, not fighting the system. So, and this is not a unique story. People all across my district and all across our country have very similar stories. And that's why I feel so passionately about unlocking more choice and expanding access for millions of people and working to reduce costs. So I support defending the ACA, defending the protections for pre-existing conditions, where my opponent supports repealing the ACA and repealing the protections for pre-existing conditions. I support building on that with a Medicare buy-in option that will be a much lower cost than the private sector and unlock that option for many, many people, and crucially do that without $1 of tax increases at a time where, a lot of families are really hurting. My opponent has no plan for the future of healthcare. And then I also support lowering prescription drug prices by allowing Medicare to negotiate them. This is the largest buyer. They should be able to negotiate. It's what you learn in freshman economics in high school. My opponent voted against a bill to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices because he's really propped up by, that oligopoly of private healthcare companies that want to keep the prices high.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your plans. I'm glad that you have plans that are real and that can be put into action. And thanks also for sharing that story about your parents. I think that that's not a unique story, but it is unique when we hear someone who's running for office or who wants to serve in office share a story like that. And I think it's so important that your constituents can see themselves in you and their experiences. So thank you so much for sharing that. Another issue at the forefront of your campaign is the need for smarter government. So can you describe what you mean when you say smarter government and how it will help our country?
Yeah, it's so funny because when I used to drive and now log in to the campaign trail all across our district, I would always hear from people, do you support big government or small government? And I would just, reactively respond, I don't support either of those. I support government that works. I support smart government. I support you knowing how your tax dollars are spent and, preserving and improving vital programs for, real people in the real world. And then, returning stuff to your pocketbook where, where it might be excess. And so I started really thinking a lot about this, like, what would it look like if we all focused on smarter government instead of the false choice of big or small? And it's a bit like, because I come from a business background, it's a bit like in the business world, I sort of joke, it's like two alternatives: you increase revenue or you fire people. Like, there are tons of things in between that you do as a business leader if revenue goes down before you fire people. You look at efficiencies, you look at all the systems you use, you look at your office space, you look at all these things. And so I started thinking, the first thing we have to do is make sure that our government is running in a smart way. For me, that's auditing federal agencies, that's modernizing systems. It's probably no secret that a lot of systems that we interact with and the government uses are kind of out of date in the technological sense. It starts looking at duplicative regulation, or where we reinvent the wheel instead of building on things, and communicating transparently to constituents about how their tax dollars are being used so that we can restore some of that faith in the value that government can give back to communities like mine.
Amazing. And you mentioned this, right? You are a businesswoman, and you were the founder of a tech company. Yeah. So how will your experience in the tech world prepare you for serving in Congress, and maybe some policy initiatives that you think will be informed by that?
Well, I think that there's kind of two sides to this. One is my experience working in what I always tell my constituents, a real person in the real world, and then specifically in the technology industry. My opponent is a 40-year career politician who's never worked for a day outside of government. He has multiple public pensions. He's run for every job in California. He's taken in $4 million from taxpayers. And while in Congress, he's never passed a single piece of legislation that's material. He's never lived in our community, and he's rated the 5th most partisan member of Congress by the Lugar Institute. The irony is he spent this entire time, the entire 40 years, pointing his finger at government and criticizing it. It's like, I hate my employer. My employer is unnecessary, And so, and so when you do that, you become so detached from real people, from small businesses, from innovators, from what people go through to put food on the table and earn a paycheck, or keep their coffee shop, or, afloat, or, start an innovative business. I have lived what my constituents have lived, and I bring that experience to representing them, empathizing with them, and together rebuilding a stronger economy locally and nationally as we move forward from COVID. Now, more specifically to my company, what we did is, ironically enough, it's a human resources software company. And what the company does is it connects people to good paying jobs and allows them to work from everywhere. So it extends economic opportunity outside of coastal cities. Now, the irony is that this is what we're all living through right now with COVID. So I've been thinking about this for more than a decade, and now we're all living through it, and we have the opportunity in communities like mine to build a really vibrant local economy and have people connect to a broader national economy virtually. And so I bring deep expertise in this area, and I'm super excited to bring that into Congress from a policy perspective and make sure that communities like mine can thrive. That's good broadband so that people can connect, and good roads so they can commute when they need to. It's incentives for particular areas, I believe especially rural and suburban areas, to create jobs and attract innovations for the future. And it's all kinds of things that I saw in the private sector that I'll bring into being a part of building a vibrant economy for the future.
Well, I am really excited about your thoughts and your future work on broadband. I live in Maine, There's lots of rural communities in Maine that don't have broadband, and it has impacted learning. And it's actually something that's come up here at Emerge. So we're, working so hard at Emerge to build this network of women who we are trying to encourage to run for office. And we've had to do that virtually. And so we have run into some hiccups in offering all of our trainings virtually, where we do want to train women in communities where broadband access is an issue. So we need you too at Emerge to continue our mission. So you are an alum of Emerge, California.
Yeah, and you actually taught me, I don't know if you remember, but at the boot camp.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, great. You did look familiar. I was like, she's familiar. So I'm so excited that you're one of our alums. So what was your experience like in Emerge, and how has being part of this network helped you in your current run?
Oh, I had such a great experience with Emerge. I mean, I had no idea what it was to run for office. I mean, I worked in a business. I worked in the private sector for 15 years. I spent most of my life pretty far from politics. I had the opportunity as my company grew to provide some feedback on the economy to members of Congress. And I was pretty taken aback, Republicans and Democrats, where I just felt like so many people were so disconnected from the realities of today's economy and running a small business and working families. So, I just got kind of triggered, and I was like, I want to jump in. I want to do something. I want to be a part of, helping our nation, helping my community for the future. But I had no idea what that was going to entail. So Emerge was super helpful in opening my eyes to the basics of running for office, and also building a network of people that I could reach out to as mentors, as friends, as supporters throughout the campaign. And I'll say, actually, one of the women running in California in an adjacent district, we actually sat together in that Emerge training. Mm-hmm. And now we very regularly message along the campaign trail and kind of pick each other up and share what we're going through and what we're seeing. So I'm very grateful for those kinds of relationships from the Emerge network.
That's amazing. I always like to say that if we can't solve the problem at Emerge, we can at least make it a little less lonely. And sometimes that's all you need, is to talk to someone who's going through the same thing. So I'm glad you have that connection. And then, so you didn't just decide to do something. You decided to run for Congress. So why Congress? Why did you decide to run for Congress? And is there anything else you want to share about your race or your district with us?
Yeah. It's interesting. Initially, I stepped down from my company after 9 years as CEO, and I knew I wanted to serve. I knew I wanted to go into some form of public service. But for me, initially, it wasn't an immediate thing. I had just written a book, actually, about the changing economy and sort of a shift to more remote and mobile work. I was planning to kind of give speeches about my book and the future of the economy, kind of transition from a crazy life of running a startup and working 100 hours a week. And, I had some personal stuff going on as well. And I decided to run because I just, like you do when you enter a new phase in life, you sort of get coffees with people and chat with people about what's out there and what you're thinking. And I did that in my community. And I kept hearing from people about how ready they are for change from Tom McClintock. And, I kept hearing from people, oh, we really like your background, like a business person in Congress, someone who understands innovation and the future, and someone who lives in our community. I kept hearing this over and over again, how frustrated people were and how ready they were to have, someone that could help to bring our community together and bring new ideas and new energy. And I sort of started thinking about it and researching, and I thought, gosh, there's no viable Democrat running against McClintock. And, he's consistently voting against our district, incredibly out of touch, doesn't live here, 40-year career politician at a time where people are really fed up with career politicians. And I thought, you know what? Sometimes these opportunities don't come twice to really do something for your community and your country. And might not be the best timing personally, but I got to jump in. So I did. And that was way before COVID and the economic collapse and the worst wildfire season already that California's ever seen. And so through the campaign, I've seen the urgency of change and the urgency of new solutions grow stronger, and the support for change and for me grow stronger, which I never could have really predicted all these things happening. And so where we are today is a race that is eminently winnable. Our race has been upgraded twice during the campaign from most ratings agencies. It is now a lean Republican race and started at safe. I mean, that's huge. Our demographics have continued to rapidly change. Even in the last year, we are the recipient of people moving out of the Bay Area from high housing prices and then accelerated with COVID. And we have a community that what I overwhelmingly hear is, I just want everything to stop. I want change. I want to contain COVID. We want to rebuild the economy. We want to stop the wildfires, protect our healthcare. And like, we're just done with politicians, on both sides is overwhelmingly what I hear. And so all of this really, really points, by the way, 75% of people are saying we're on the wrong track in the country, in my district. So this overwhelmingly points to an election that we can win, where we can do something incredible for our state, for our community, and defeat one of the most virulently partisan and extreme members of Congress.
Great. Well, I love it. I love that you just stepped up and found your path. That's important. So if there are other women watching out there live, or maybe they're watching the recording of this later, and maybe they're business women as well, like yourself, and they're thinking of running for office, what would you tell them? What are some encouraging words of wisdom or advice that you might be able to offer?
My philosophy is that if we cede our country to extremes, we have no positive outcome going forward. I hear from so many people, this is most prevalent in the private sector, but it's, prevalent all across the community and the country. People say, I don't want anything to do with it. It's so toxic today. Just a slight story tangent, but I did an event last night. We did our first in-person event in like 6 months, masked, socially distanced. It was at a winery locally. It was like so much fun to be out. But my daughter, who was very young, said to me after the event, she was like, I'm not even registered to vote because I just look at it all and I'm like, I don't like any of it and I don't want to be a part of it. She's like, but I heard you talking and giving this speech about bipartisanship and how we all have to jump in and change it. And she's like, I just went on my phone and registered to vote and I'm voting for you. And I thought, gosh, that's exactly the spirit that we need. We have to not sit and complain and not roll our eyes and say it's not solvable. We have to summon all of our fight and all of our passion and all of our love for this country and our entrepreneurial spirit and say, this is a problem worth solving. And this is a problem that we can solve, putting our country back together and our communities back together. And so I encourage everyone who is frustrated, everyone who's apathetic, everyone who turns off the TV and gets a glass of wine in sadness to instead say, how do I dig deep within my gut and do something to be a part of the change that I want to see? That may be running for office, that may be working at Emerge, that may be working on a campaign, that may be donating. All of those things help us to build the future that I believe we all want to see.
Wow. Well, one of my favorite authors, the late Maya Angelou, used to talk about finding rainbows in your clouds. And there's some dark times happening in your state and across our country. And you're definitely a rainbow in my clouds today. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for inspiring that young woman to register to vote and to vote for you. And I know that anyone watching this can see that it can be done, that you can lace up your sneakers and get to work and run for office. And so if you're watching that and you're interested, you can find out more about Emerge California and Emerge America at emergeamerica.org. And I'm just so thankful that you were able to join us today, Brynne. And I wish you all the best of luck and and strength and energy for these final weeks of this campaign. You're doing a fantastic job. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you to everyone who watched this episode of Races to Watch. It's going to be available on Emerge's YouTube channel, and you can subscribe there for updates for our team so that you can always tune in for future episodes.
Thank you so much, Jill. And for everyone watching, if you want to learn more about the campaign, you can go to brynneforcongress.com. That's BRYNNE. And you can remember how to say my name because Brynne rhymes with win.
I love it. Thank you, Brynne, and thank you everyone for tuning in today.
Thank you so much.